Coming up on the Devil's Puck Luck podcast, Kevin Bahl is officially back in the Devil's fold. We break down the contract, what it means for the defense in New Jersey, and whether or not we think Fitzgerald just keeps hitting every right button when it comes to offseason moves. Let's dive in next. Yes, sir. It is the Devil's Puck Luck podcast right here. You may have noticed on the Hockey Podcast Network. We promised you big news, and this is exactly it. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets on the Locked On Nets podcast with Doug Norrie and your New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast with Andy Mack, joined as always by Danny McDonough, the 20-year season ticket holder for your New Jersey Devils. Almost couldn't get it all out there, man. Too excited. We are going to talk about, obviously, Kevin Bahl and the new contract, but just taking a moment here, as we will for these first couple of episodes, officially joining the Hockey Podcast Network, man. There's a ton of great shows, gives us an opportunity to have some awesome crossover content. Ecstatic, man. Ecstatic to be taking the next step first.
This is awesome.
Don't talk over me, okay?
My apologies.
We're on a network.
But, it's awesome because obviously bridging the gap to all different teams across the NHL, and it's honored to be a part of it. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be a fun ride this season for sure.
You better believe it. So stay tuned for all those great things we're doing with that. But let's stay focused on what matters most. And that obviously is going to be one, Kevin Bahl. This is how the offseason goes for the New Jersey Devils this year. You just wait. And you don't have to wait with like an anxious kind of energy. You wait patiently and calmly because all the good news just keeps on coming.
Yeah, it's that's the key point right there, is that you are not worried. You trust Fitz. You know what's going to happen. He's moving this team in the right direction. Yeah. And you know me, man. I've been a Kevin Bahl fan since really the end of the season last year and the playoffs. I thought he was a really important piece for this young Devils team, and I'm happy to see him get that contract.
2-year, $2.1 million, 1.05 AAV for Kevin Bahl. Just initially on the contract, does that seem like an insane value? Because we're going to hit some quotes here from him as well, just in terms of his age and where we think his game can go. It's short, so there's going to be an opportunity to get him
It's
more
an
money
interesting question, obviously, but the 2-year deal is obviously like, hey, you're a young player. This is your 2-year deal. Prove to us what you can do. I'm going to say it here now.
Okay.
After 2 years, Kevin Bahl is going to be long-term contract and at least $3.5 to $4 million a year. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. I think he is in the right direction with his career. Barring something crazy where he just has a very, very off year, you're going to see him develop his game even more, which you saw at the end of last season, obviously in the playoffs. But listen, I think this is a fair contract for both, him and the Devils organization. And he wants to be a part of this core, which is, to me, that's the most important aspect of the signing,
Yeah, you're talking about at 23 years old, just to your point, 2 years from now, 25, and then you get that next contract. Maybe it's $3.5, $4 million a year. Yeah. And maybe you lock him up for, 4-year deal. Like, I think Bahl probably falls into this category that you want him to be around. You want him to be a part of this, but he may not be the guy that gets the 6 and 7 year the 8-year deals, but that they're always taking care of him and hopefully always giving him what feels like market value. Before we just talk about what we think his game's going to be here, Amanda Stein, obviously, for the New Jersey Devils, covers this. He did Kevin Bahl with the press on, that'll be Tuesday. Yep. So on Tuesday, just a couple of nice quotes here. First of which was in terms of what he thinks, where his game is, right? I needed to grow and find out what I was going to do on this team, what I was capable of. Kevin Bahl on figuring things out this past season. On that first note, do you look back at this past year and think more, I saw the glimpses of what Kevin Bahl could be, and also the growing pains and the learning curve? Like, do you think he's accurately encapsulating himself?
Absolutely. I think he knows in the beginning of last season that he was kind of lost a little bit, where he was going to fit into this team, how he was going to fit into this team, but more importantly, knowing how he had to be the specific player the Devils needed. Big body, tough against the boards, strong against the boards, and making sure you pinch in the right moments, and not giving up really bad defensive breaks. So, and you saw his maturation throughout the season, which we've talked about so many times. And I think that grew and flourished against the Rangers in the playoffs. And to me, was that the coming out party for?
We talked about this with Mikey McLeod as well. Just when you get to that playoff, you get the opportunity. This is really from an organizational standpoint.
Sure.
You get to say who has that next gear to get to. It felt like Bahl came into that series, came to the playoffs, and said, "Yeah, Like I know, I mean, that's the course of an 82-game season. I know what I need to do here. Now, understanding as well, by the way, that he played in 42 games total this past year.
You know where I look back is I called Salicata one night in the overnight, late night. And he's a Ranger fan, as we know, from the fan. And he was like talking on the radio, and he was very like, who is this Bahl guy? Who is this guy? Against the Rangers in the playoffs.
Right, like that.
He was a dominant factor. And he was like, oh, this guy's crazy. So he came into his own, and he was getting noticed by everyone across the NHL, especially Ranger fan. Listen, he was frustrating the Rangers, all series. And he's going to be that type of player. He's also going to be the type of player that's going to defend our young core physically. I can see him having a lot more fights this year. I can see him getting into more scraps this year, especially after losing Wood. Wood was going to throw hands. We know he's going to fight a little bit. Bastian obviously is going to fight a little bit. So I think he's going to have a lot more different styles he has to really give the Devils this year. And listen, he's a big body. He knows what to do, and he's learning how to control his body. He's learning what he needs to do to be in the defensive core,
And so coming up here in a second, let's take a look at another couple of quotes from the press conference with Kevin Bahl as covered by Amanda Stein, and then look inside the lineups and expectations just from a production standpoint, even beyond the big hits and everything else you want him to do. How does Bahl take that next leap? We'll continue it next. Jump back into the conversation after I let you know that... Jump back into the conversation after I let you know today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. Jump right back into the conversation after I let you know today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. New customers can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use promo code THPN just like our network. Bet just $5 to score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN, just like the Hockey Podcast Network, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 1-800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelpline.org. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resorts in Kansas City, in West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly. In partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Race in Connecticut. Help is available for problem gambling. You can call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but ages vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance and 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10 plus leg required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms of sportsbook. DraftKings.com/baseball terms. Okay, so as we're talking about Kevin Bahl signing the 2-year extension, average 1.05 AAV per year, which is right in the sweet spot from a price point if you're the New Jersey Devils. I wanted to touch back into this other one here when talking with Amanda Stein at his press conference. You've got 2 top D men moving out, so it's going to be different, but at the same time, we've still got a really good D core. That's Kevin Bahl on the D changes this offseason.
Yeah.
Let's look at it from that standpoint now. You're talking about a player that's 23 years old, has a lot of growth, has that next big step to take. And the pocket, the opening to take that next big step is very much in front of him to fill.
Yeah, and I think he knows and he's recognizing right there that Severson and Graves were important players for this Devils organization, and he is going to have to step up in a big way. And it's not a 1-year deal, it's a 2-year deal, but it's a 2-year type of deal where you're going to have to prove yourselves as you're going to be the staple of this defensive core. And I think having that and knowing where he stands with the organization, like I said, it's time for him to prove that his game is going to be consistent, and I love that quote. I really do.
Now, and do you look at what pairing do you want to see him on when we talk about his impact?
There's a few different things and a few ways I look at this. I would love to see him with Luke Hughes. I really would. I think that.
Oh, that's the really nice defensive, offensive-minded balance.
And he's a big body, so Luke Hughes is going to skate through the center of the ice, and he's going to be that offensive defenseman. And again, it's going to add a little protection to Luke Hughes because he's going to take some open ice hits. It's going to happen. Physicality wise, he's going to be protecting Luke Hughes, but also when Luke Hughes, who is going to pinch more often than Kevin Bahl will, you have Kevin Bahl there to obviously protect defensively. So I would love to see them on a pairing.
6'6", 230, Kevin Bahl. Luke Hughes, top of your head, do you know what his measurables are?
What is he? 5'11", 185?
Oh, come on, dude.
What is he?
6'2".
Is he 6'2"?
But 190.
I didn't realize he was 6'2". I'm wondering. So Quinn Hughes, I think their brother is a little shorter, right? If I'm, I don't know. Yeah, look at that stat. I'm curious here.
Do you know?
And Jack's 6 foot, right?
Yeah, let's talk from a brother's standpoint.
I think Jack's 6 foot.
Where does Jack come in? Oh, Jackie boy.
Man, I'm thinking about this.
Jack Hughes is 5'11".
5'11", all right. So he's
Jack Hughes 5'11", 175.
You know, in my defense, we haven't seen Luke Hughes on the ice as much, so you don't realize how big he is. 6'2". He's lanky too. So.
If you remember, I'm gonna try to look up Quinn Bahl's. Quinn. I got Kevin Bahl. I got Kevin Bahl on the mind here. When you think about when he first came on the ice, the first time they saw him make his debut down the back end of the season, I remember in the moment being like, "Oh, he's big."
Yeah.
And again, when we were there at the Prudential Center, and you were like, he's like 190 pounds. I was like, but he looks big. Now, again, there's the length there, which is a positive for him in terms of, hey, you're never going to see this kid. He's not getting to Kevin Bahl status of 230, but I can easily see him getting up to 200.
Look at Jack Hughes. You know, Jack Hughes got bigger. You know, he developed his body. Obviously, he's a young kid, you know, so they're going to lift weights, you know, they're going to get stronger. But yeah, he'd probably be like 200 pounds. I could see him, you know, 6'2", 200 pounds. It's a strong defenseman. So, but obviously you don't want Luke Hughes to be the guy that's throwing bodies. You know, you obviously want him to be strong on the boards, you know, forechecking wise too, but you don't want him to be the guy that's throwing the big hits. That's Kevin Bahl's job. You know, to me, that's why they would fit well on a line together, on a pairing together.
Expectations then from a production standpoint for Kevin Bahl, understanding the role that you're talking about him fitting into. Let's remember, again, 42 games this past year. So if we're talking about him being available for the majority of 82 games, maybe, you know, a couple of days of rest here and there. What do you want to see from a stat line from him? We know we get away from the plus minus. That's not indicative of how you are production wise, but talking about hits, and then even talking about a little bit of the offensive game, though. I mean, how can he impact it if you're talking about a pairing like that with Luke Hughes potentially on that defensive pairing?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking outside the box that he will be with Luke Hughes, but you know, Luke Hughes could also be with like someone like Marino too. So obviously seeing how things play out, Kevin Bahl's offensive numbers will obviously be better if he's with Luke Hughes on a pairing.
Okay, hold on. Let's even pause that for 1 second, because to your point, you'd like to see him with Luke Hughes.
Right, yeah.
What is the pairing that then, if not Luke, where is he going to pair with? What makes sense for you when you look at some of the additions and then some of the remaining
Marino? I would like to see him with Marino, to be honest with you. Because
so you would put Bahl on the second pairing with Marino, and then put Luke Hughes on the third pairing,
probably with Miller.
Okay,
you know,
assuming I know what you're saying.
Because then if you have John Marino and Kevin Bahl on a pairing, it's going to be a very defensive pairing and a shutdown type of second defensive pairing. You know, which
it's interesting.
You know, so I think that, listen, it's Lindy Ruff. You know, there's going to be a lot of line combination changes. You know, it's going to happen. I think Hamilton and Siegenthal are going to be on a line together, the number one line. You know, there's a lot of questions.
All right, right back to the conversation. After we let you know that even if you're not going on vacation, summer's still all about being in a vacation state of mind. Whether I want to be rocking out to my favorite old school band, Weezer, or just need a little bit of time to retreat inside my own head, I love creating my own summer soundtrack by popping in my Raycon wireless earbuds. There's obviously a lot going on in the summer. Sometimes you need to get pumped up when you're going to go get together with a bunch of friends, or maybe you want to go ahead and keep calm with some guided meditation. All I can tell you is that Raycons are the best way to listen. You can use earbud tap functions to toggle between 3 customizable sound profiles, noise isolation, and awareness mode as well. Raycons have a 32-hour battery life, including 8 hours of playtime, so you can listen to what you want, when you want, for a really long time. They come with custom gel tips for the most comfortable in-ear fit, and they start at half the price of other premium audio brands, but they sound just as good. And Raycons come with a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. Create your own soundtrack with Raycon right now. Listeners of the Devil's Puck Luck podcast can get 15% off of their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/THPN, just like our network. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to save 15% off on Raycons. Buyraycons.com/THPN.
THPN.
By the way, I got there. Quinn Hughes, 5'10", 170.
Wow,
the lightest and smallest.
So Luke Hughes, Luke Hughes is the tallest.
Luke Hughes, when they get together for family events, he muscles around Jack and Quinn.
Well, now that you think about it, like if you see pictures of them, now it makes sense. You know, I knew Luke Hughes was a little bit taller. I did not think he was 6'2". Yeah. But like you said too, he's gonna develop. Obviously, I'm only 5'11". I'm 20 pounds heavier than him.
You might want to get it together there.
Yeah. So anyway,
we don't need to get too much in the weeds on that. Bottom line being, I think you're right. We'll see how this is why camp becomes so interesting for the Devils, because you mentioned about Lindy Ruff and these combinations. One of the things I would love to see them flesh out when it comes to a Kevin Bahl is saying, how do we try to define these pairings as early as possible? Sure. And that includes Luke Hughes. It includes Miller, as you mentioned, because last year it felt like you were taking different samples because you really didn't know what we talked about this before. You kind of were overachieving throughout the year. So it seemed like Lindy Ruff was still trying to follow the same model if you weren't overachieving and saying, we're still trying to figure things out, because in the big picture, that matters. If you had stuck with X or Y pairing, it may have ultimately panned out. But then the job of Fitzgerald is off season, making key decisions, 100%. Contracts might have been a little more difficult. And that I know that's hard for fans to sometimes hear, like when you're in a season and you want the division 100%. And you want to win in the playoffs, why are you messing with this? Well, because we know that 2 and 3 years down the road, we don't want to look back and think that we maybe gave the contract to the wrong player and missed an opportunity to catch a guy in an upswing, and Kevin Bahl falls into it.
It's an absolutely excellent point. Also, not to jump back a little bit, but remember, he's going to get a lot of time in the penalty kill.
Well, and that was the other thing that I wanted to talk about too, just because you mentioned Luke Hughes, and we know that he's going to have a big role when it comes to the power play. That's where we think he can make a lot of his headway. But then for Kevin Bahl, with some of the removal of other defensive players, he now becomes, and that maybe becomes interesting. If we go back to these pairings for a second, that becomes a little fascinating for me, because if we think that Bahl could have a key role in penalty kill moments, then I wonder how you look at the third and fourth line defensive pairings and the functionality that you want to have with him. Meaning, are you more concerned about the kill opportunities or about what he's going to be potentially paired with Luke Hughes defensively or paired with Marino, and how you structure that?
Ryan Graves had a lot of penalty kill time.
That's what I mean, right?
So Kevin Bahl is stepping into that role, and you're going to see the special teams be very different, obviously, than your three pairings defensively. But I can see Bahl and Marino out on the penalty kill, and then I could see Bahl with Luke Hughes a lot, on 5-on-5. There's a lot to shake down. Obviously, it's going to depend on, preseason and kind of the chemistry of different players too. And a lot of trial by error, comfortability when it comes to different players with different, offensive groups, defensive groups, whatever it might be. So for me, I still would love to see Luke Hughes with Bahl just as that security blanket, because I want, and you want, to make sure that Luke Hughes does not worry about his game in the sense of, we need that offensive capability from Luke Hughes still.
And I like the dynamic, two very young players, and just makes for an exciting pairing there on the defensive side. That being the case, it's a 2-year extension, $2.10 million, average AAV of 1.05. And just as a reminder, penalty minutes, he did have last year over 42 games, 35 penalty minutes for Kevin Bahl. We expect that to grow. We expect the games to grow here, obviously. And listen, 2 goals and 6 assists. He is not going to be, and we talk about this all the time, a defensive player that you worry about what type of stats, box scores. No. All I care about is, as you've mentioned, protecting the guys that you're paired with, being a very sound, fundamental defensive player, because while this has become a very deep offensive team, there are definitely going to be some explorative, moments 100%. Here early in the season when it comes to the defense. I think it's a good trade-off that Fitzgerald has made this offseason, but it's going to look different, and players like Bahl are going to have to step up in a big way. Closing thoughts.
Listen, Kevin Bahl can easily be like a 5 to 7 goals, 20 assists type of guy, but we talk about the plus minus not being a huge thing. And, you overlook it sometimes, and maybe it's a stat that's misleading, but it's going to be important for Kevin Bahl. It's, we talk about the back end of this team, obviously making sure to protect our goaltending, because I think that is the biggest question mark around the league. Are the Devils going to be able to sustain a big run with our goaltending? And Kevin Bahl is going to fall into that huge factor of replacing Ryan Graves' minutes and being a key player defensively. But if he's playing with Luke Hughes a little bit, he's going to get some offensive numbers, mostly assists, I'm sure. So, listen, I love Kevin Bahl. I've always been a big Kevin Bahl guy. So congratulations to him on the contract. I think it's great for the Devils organization, and I'm excited to see him on the ice.
Reminder, as we say, that we are officially, as you've noticed, if you're watching us over on YouTube, a part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Couldn't be more excited to be a part of it. And you can expect a lot more expanding content as we head through this off season and towards ultimately the regular season. In the meantime, you get over to Twitter, where you can follow at Adam Armbrecht. You can follow at Danny the Face. You get us over on YouTube at Devils Puck Luck Podcast, on Instagram
at Devils Puck Luck,
and of course back over on Twitter at NJ Devils PL, to make sure that you're just getting all the coverage, all the information.
Hey, we're on TikTok too.
And we're also on TikTok at,
Devils
I'm assuming, Devils Puck Luck.
Yeah.
So they call that social media. And you can find us all over the place, man. Until next time, as we say, just like we want the man on the ice, let's all keep balling.